Today on NewsWatch, healthcare showdown. GOP lawmakers vote on replacing Obamacare today. The big question, is there enough support? Plus, terror in Britain. Officials say the deadly attack was inspired by ISIS. We'll bring you the details. And keeping your blood pressure in check. Why a diet change might be just as powerful as taking medicine. Thanks for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Mark Martin. It's a big day in Washington as Congress votes on the American Health Care Act, the health care plan that would replace Obamacare. Today also marks day 4 of confirmation hearings for Supreme Court Justice nominee Neil Gorsuch. Abigail Robertson brings us more details from Capitol Hill.
House Republican leadership is fired up and ready to repeal Obamacare through the bill called the American Health Care Act. But getting enough support to pass it has been far from easy for the GOP. Skeptical congressmen like Jim Jordan voiced their concerns to CBN News soon after the bill was released.
Look, we're united on repeal, Republicans are, but right now some of the, quote, replacement and some of the things they're putting in with the repeal in the leadership plan, we don't think is consistent with what we told the voters we're going to do.
The conservative House Freedom Caucus argues the bill won't do enough to lower health care costs, and as such is a missed opportunity in replacing Obamacare the right way.
We didn't tell the voters we're going to repeal Obamacare, but we're going to keep some of the Obamacare taxes. I know I didn't tell them that.
22 Republican no votes would prevent the bill from passing, and a source told CBN News Wednesday that at least 27 GOP members were a no on the health care bill the White House supports on the eve of the scheduled vote in the full House.
There's Plan A and Plan A. We're going to get this done.
The president visited the Capitol in a closed-door meeting with Republicans this week to try to win over conservatives on the fence and to lay out the political stakes if their attempt at overhauling the healthcare system fails. He left the meeting hopeful he'll get the votes.
Can you get the votes, Mr. President?
I think so.
And there's been other drama on the Hill. Just 2 days after FBI Director James Comey confirmed they are investigating ties between Trump officials and Russia, House Intelligence Committee Chair Devin Nunes said a source had shown him information that Trump transition team members had come under apparently legal surveillance after the election during the final months of the Obama administration.
I recently confirmed that on numerous occasions, the intelligence community incidentally collected information about U.S. citizens involved in the Trump transition. Details about U.S. persons associated with the incoming administration, details with little or no apparent foreign intelligence value, were widely disseminated in intelligence community reporting.
Nunes didn't share his information with the ranking Democrat on the committee, Adam Schiff, before announcing it. He says that names of the officials were unmasked or revealed improperly, and that they are going to conduct an investigation into who was aware of it and whether any laws were violated. Nunes briefed President Trump, who has said that Trump Tower was wiretapped by the Obama administration, and he says he feels somewhat vindicated by the findings.
I somewhat do. I must tell you, I somewhat do. I very much appreciated the fact that they found what they found, but I somewhat do.
And over in the Senate, Judge Neil Gorsuch's hearing on his nomination to the Supreme Court is moving forward smoothly, with witnesses now appearing before the Judiciary Committee.
I think that Judge Gorsuch will be an excellent Associate Justice on the Supreme Court.
Hannah Smith, two-time Supreme Court clerk and member of the Beckett legal teams that defended clients like Hobby Lobby and the Little Sisters of the Poor, is one of the people testifying before the committee.
He's written 800 opinions, and of those 800 opinions, the majority of them, by far, about 98%, have been unanimous opinions, which just shows what a consensus builder he is and how he has written opinions that all of his colleagues can join.
Senate Republicans are certain Judge Gorsuch will be the next justice on the Supreme Court.
Why anybody in this body would vote against you, I'll never understand.
After the hearings conclude, the Senate Judiciary Committee will vote on whether to send the nominee to the whole Senate with a positive, negative, or neutral rating. Reporting from Capitol Hill, Abigail Robertson, CBN News.
British police say they believe the attacker who killed 3 people, including a police officer outside Parliament Wednesday, acted alone and was inspired by international terrorism. Dale Hurd has the latest.
British police have raided several addresses and arrested 8 people in connection with yesterday's attack by a knife-wielding man who used his SUV to mow down pedestrians on London's famed Westminster Bridge, then fatally stabbed a policeman before he was shot by police and later died.
There was bodies, literally.
Must have been about 10 bodies.
12 bodies.
The driver then crashed his vehicle into the gates outside Parliament.
And I see that one car smashed to the wall, and just people started running all over.
Among the victims, a Romanian woman who was in London to celebrate her boyfriend's birthday, shown here either being hit or jumping from the bridge. She was later pulled from the Thames River with severe injuries but survived. The dead, policeman Keith Palmer, seen here as officers and emergency workers furiously tried to keep him alive. Also, 43-year-old Spanish teacher Aisha Frade, who was on her way to pick up her children. Also, a man in his 50s. 29 were hospitalized and 7 were in critical condition. The number of so-called walking wounded is around 40. The attacker has been identified and was known to British security, but no other details were known. The attack came on the anniversary of last year's suicide bombings at the Brussels International Airport that killed 32 people. ISIS claimed responsibility. And while Britain hasn't seen as many terror attacks as some nations, it remains a factory of Muslim jihadists. 850 British citizens have joined ISIS. It dawned on one tourist that he had come to a potentially dangerous place.
I'm from Brazil, and in Brazil is very safe. In London, first day in London is today, and my welcome is this.
Dale Hurd, CBN News.
A more aggressive approach to fighting ISIS seems to be paying off. The United States airlifted Arab Syrian rebels and Kurds into the terrorist group's stronghold city of Raqqa, their headquarters or capital. It signals a move by the Trump administration to become more involved in the conflict, and Secretary of State Rex Tillerson says it's working.
Hard-fought victories in Iraq and Syria have swung the momentum in our coalition's favor.
Tillerson met with that 68-nation coalition yesterday in Washington. He says it carried out more than 19,000 targeted strikes, freeing cities in Iraq and Syria. The latest report by the State Department shows 62% of the territory once controlled by ISIS in Iraq is now free, and 30% in Syria. Meanwhile, during more than a year of vetting, Australia denied 500 Syrian refugees entry into the country for security reasons. Australia's Immigration and Border Protection Minister says Wednesday's deadly attack near Britain's Parliament is evidence that his country made the right decision to use caution when admitting refugees from Syria. Australia says that during that period of vetting, the country did allow 12,000 refugees from the Middle East. Google could lose millions of dollars due to angry advertiser complaints. AT&T, Verizon, and other major advertisers are suspending their marketing campaigns on Google's YouTube site because their brands have been showing up alongside videos that promote terrorism. The head of Google Europe, Middle East, and Africa apologized after the complaints.
So I want to start by saying sorry. We apologize when anything like that happens. We don't want it to happen. You don't want it to happen. And we take responsibility for it.
Matt Britton says Google is looking at policies, controls, and enforcement to deal with advertisers' concerns. A West Virginia public school district is battling the parents of a kindergarten student over its practice of teaching the Bible. The child's mother says the Bible in the school's program is unconstitutional because it endorses one religion and violates the consciences of non-religious students and parents. The school district is arguing that the parents of the kindergartner don't have standing to sue because the Bible class doesn't start until the first grade. In health news now, millions of Americans are walking around with a silent killer inside their bodies, and they don't even know it. High blood pressure is the #1 risk factor for strokes and a leading cause of heart attack. But as Lori Johnson explains, there's a way to help lower high blood pressure through a diet that works just as effectively as medication.
A whopping 1/3 of American adults have potentially deadly high blood pressure, also called hypertension. That's 80 million people. Half of them do not have it under control. 1/5 don't even know they have it. The good news is Duke University researchers developed the DASH diet, a great way to get and keep your blood pressure in the healthy range.
It can lower blood pressure at levels equivalent to what you might get from medication. And so we think of it as just as effective as the blood pressure medications that are out there today.
The DASH diet, which stands for Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension, consists of lots of vegetables and fruits, also beans, nuts, fish, poultry, and whole grains. What's not on the diet are fast foods and processed foods. That means no sugar, hydrogenated oil, processed meats, or white flour. Doctors have known about the DASH diet for 20 years now and have been recommending it to their patients with high blood pressure. But researchers discovered only 1% of Americans fully follow it, and just 20% follow it halfway. That's because of America's so-called food environment. Fast foods and processed foods are everywhere, while the foods on the diet aren't as commonplace. Also, they generally take longer to prepare and typically cost more. However, there are ways to spend less while getting more healthy, nutritious foods.
Frozen fruits and vegetables are really low costs and can be easily accessible in supermarkets, just like the convenience foods that are available in the next aisle. Other foods like beans, whether they be cooked or uncooked, and nuts, those things also tend to be less expensive and are very rich in the nutrients that we know are helpful for lowering blood pressure.
So while following the DASH diet might require spending more time and money on food, in the long run you may end up saving on blood pressure medication you won't need, and you could end up saving something else, your life. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
Coming up, rebuilding in Peru. See how people of faith are helping after floods and mudslides create devastation in that country. Welcome back. Christians are stepping in to provide relief to survivors of massive flooding and mudslides in Peru. Gary Lane reports that torrential rains have brought death and destruction to the South American country, but the disaster has also brought out the best from the body of Christ.
Young Christians from Emmanuel Bible Church visited one of the affected areas near Lima. The people of Terrazas del Valle and Chosica received much-needed relief. Their city was flooded after a nearby river spilled over its banks and into city streets, leaving many families without housing, food, and water.
The calamities have fallen on this country and have affected many people. We identify families in towns like this, where the floods have impacted and the people have lost everything.
Since January, warmer than usual ocean water temperatures and high winds, a coastal El Niño, have brought torrential rains, flooding, and mudslides, mostly to Peru's northern coast. The government says so far at least 75 had died. More than 99,000 people have been affected. These villagers express gratitude for the timely help they received from the young Christians.
I'm so thankful for this help. We are more needed than ever. We are hungry, thirsty, and the people don't have water, no foods. We are impotent. I feel bad because children are those who suffer the most.
Rosana Zapata, our Mundo Cristiano Christian World News Spanish correspondent in Peru, witnessed the relief given to villagers near Lima.
Help not only has been materials, but also spiritual.
Zapata reports Peruvian Christians have launched a worldwide prayer appeal on social media called #PrayForPeru. This volunteer prayed on location.
We are praying with them. A lot of them have accepted Jesus, and that is a great satisfaction for us. We know that we can help them, and we are the hands and the feet of Jesus. Blessed are the feet of those who bring good news to those in need.
We have many families affected, and we are very grateful for your presence. Thanks God for giving us the supplies. You give us spiritual support, and this is very important to move forward.
CBN is also bringing timely help, partnering with Peruvian Christians and others in the affected areas. In partnership with Peru's Joint Command and the founder of Business Solutions Against Poverty, our in-country disaster relief teams have delivered medicines, water, and insect repellent. We've joined with churches in Peru's capital city of Lima to provide food, clothing, blankets, and drinking water for flood victims in the cities of Chimbote and Trujillo. Meteorologists are predicting heavy rains may continue through the end of April, so CBN is organizing more teams to bring help in the days ahead. Gary Lane, CBN News.
And you can learn more about how to help with the devastation in Peru by logging on to ob.org. Up next, reflecting on the legacy of former President Ronald Reagan, we sit down with the woman who was his executive assistant. It's an exclusive interview you won't want to miss. Many people consider him one of our greatest presidents. Ronald Reagan is beloved today for both the way he changed the world and the way he conducted himself as America's 40th president. Now a woman who worked for him in his later years is telling that part of his story. Here's CBN News White House correspondent Jennifer Wishon.
Nearly 3 decades after President Ronald Reagan left the White House, the Gipper remains as classic as his wardrobe. He's a conservative superstar Republicans love to quote, and his image is a favorite for political internet memes.
I think now more than ever, we're wondering what real leadership looks like, what it can look like at the highest and best, and Ronald Reagan certainly provides a great example of that.
Peggy Grandy worked as Reagan's executive assistant for a decade after he left office. In her new book, The President Will See You Now, she pulls back the curtain on Reagan's final years in public life.
You know, we don't know in life why we're put in the places we are, and I have no idea why God chose to, pluck this young woman from obscurity and drop her at the feet of greatness, but I determined that I would be a good steward of that role.
She witnessed firsthand Reagan's diagnosis and struggle with Alzheimer's. It was an adventurous job that placed a girl fresh out of college in the midst of world leaders, like the time Reagan invited his friend Mikhail Gorbachev to his ranch in California. Grandy had to find a special gift for the former communist leader of the Soviet Union.
And so what does a cowboy give another president? You give him a cowboy hat. So I was tasked with finding a cowboy hat for Gorbachev. So the pressure was on to make sure it wasn't just a Stetson, but it had to be a little different than the president, so they weren't too matching. And it also had to fit Gorbachev. So how on earth do you figure out Gorbachev's hat size?
After a number of overnight calls to Moscow and faxes with hand-drawn diagrams, Grandy finally got a hat size.
It did fit him, but we did get a call from Stetson a few days later saying that he had put the hat on backwards. So the best laid plans, sometimes there's only so much you can do.
And what about Reagan's relationship with his wife, Nancy? Was their love really as epic as it's been portrayed?
They were so cute to see together. I mean, if they could be on opposite sides of the room, and it was like magnets that just eventually wound up being drawn back together. They were never just standing side by side. He was always holding her hand, or he'd put his arm around to the small of her back, and just a genuine love for each other. The delight that would light up his eyes when she walked into the room. And, every now and then I'd go around the corner in the office and maybe find them hugging or kissing in the hallway, and Secret Service would kind of be backs to them thinking, okay, I'll leave them alone. But, these were older people, and they still had such a genuine love for each other.
When Reagan went public with his Alzheimer's diagnosis, Grandy saw her professional purpose sharpen into focus.
As a Christian myself, I knew that this man was a great man of faith, and so it was important to me to not only serve him in a professional capacity, but also to be aware of his faith and how I could support that, especially in those later years. He loved going to church, and it was very difficult after he made the Alzheimer's announcement because the paparazzi would show up, and it was very disruptive to the church and the other parishioners. And so it was important to make sure that his pastor came and visited with him regularly and would come and bring the church bulletin and share with him a little summary of the message of that week.
When did you know that something wasn't quite right?
There were just some things that were very specific, now we know, to Alzheimer's, that I started noticing. Stories he had told 1,000 times that maybe would stumble him up or he'd lose his place. But it was very uncharacteristic for him. By making it public, he wanted people to have research go to it, have awareness brought to the illness, and really take a lot of the shame and the stigma away from so many families that suffer from it.
Reagan is known as the great communicator. He and America's current president certainly have different styles, but Grandy thinks they'd have one thing in common.
I believe that Ronald Reagan would have been a tweeter, that he would have used social media to connect directly to people.
I would love to see what Ronald Reagan would tweet, actually.
Yeah, do you think he could tweet down that wall? I don't know.
Jennifer Wishon, CBN News, Washington.
What a great story. She sure did have an important role there. We'll be right back. In an exclusive story CBN News broke this week, we've learned that President Trump will deliver the commencement address at Liberty University in May. Trump is no stranger to the school. He spoke at Liberty's convocation in both 2012 and 2016. And University President Jerry Falwell Jr. was one of his most prominent evangelical backers during the presidential campaign. In a statement provided exclusively to CBN News, the president told us, quote, "I look forward to speaking to this amazing group of students on such a momentous occasion. Our children truly are the future, and I look forward to celebrating the success of this graduating class, as well as sharing lessons as they embark on their next chapter full of hope, faith, optimism, and a passion for life." For more on this story and President Trump's impact with evangelicals so far, you can head over to the Brody File on CBNNews.com, where David Brody and our White House correspondent Jennifer Wishon provide more in-depth analysis. Well, that's it for now on CBN NewsWatch, and you can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about at CBNNews.com. Also, tell us what you think about the stories you've seen here, and you can do that by emailing newswatch@cbn.com, or simply talk to us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Hope you'll join us next time. Have a great day.